Welcome back to session 3 of this course. In week 1, we thought about following boldly and expecting regeneration. Last week it was facing outwards and worshipping joyfully. And this week the pair of values we're exploring are pursuing unity and embracing diversity. Unity and diversity are often spoken of together, aren't they, both in church and in society? But what does it actually mean for us as church to live that out? These values might seem, unlike the first two pairs, to be all about our relationships with each other rather than with God and the world outside. But I hope that we will find that actually unity and diversity are right at the heart of our relationship with God and key to our relationship with those beyond the church. On Sunday in our services, we explored Isaiah chapter 56, where God makes it clear to his people that they are to welcome people very different from them and in ways that were difficult for them, right into their midst. Not just to approve of them or accept them or give them space, but to make them part of the community. We also looked at Jesus' teaching about the vine and the branches, reminding ourselves that unity is God-given, and that the key to maintaining it is actually to maintain our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. A branch that neglects its connection to the vine, and thereby to the other branches, will not last very long. And we looked at the famous passages in Paul's letter to the Corinthians about the body of Christ and the characteristics of love, noticing that they are right next to each other in the letter, not an accident. Diversity in the church is by design, and therefore we will need to exercise love, because we are one with people who are nothing like us, and who it's entirely possible that we might not naturally like. This happens within each local church and across the whole church. We are one, and we are different, but it's easier to pretend that we're not. That's why these values are phrased the way that they are. Unity and diversity are not things that we have to create. God has done that for us. But unity requires strenuous effort, pursuing, in order to live it out. And diversity requires openness. Openness to change, openness to challenge, openness to pain, openness to disagreement, openness to people on the basis of God's love for them and their membership of the body of Christ, rather than on the basis of what we think of them or their habits or opinions. Our attitude must be open-armed embrace, because our instinct may well be cross-armed deterrence or even heavily armed defence. Thinking about other parts of scripture that talk about unity and diversity, the problem is not that they're difficult to find, but that you can't read very much of scripture without finding them. They are such common themes. Romans chapter 12, pretty much the whole of Acts, Jesus' 3-chapter prayer in John centering on the theme of unity, the prayer that his disciples would be one, and note that that would be how the world would identify them. Ephesians chapters 3 and 4 also talk about unity and diversity, and specifically about how to live them out by means of virtuous living. Now, I know that virtuous is a word that's not terribly fashionable. It can sound self-righteous. But virtue is an ancient idea of right ways to live that the church has always embraced and found helpful. The word today is most often used in the term virtue signalling. People accuse others of virtue signalling when they make some sort of public statement in support of a popular campaign or opinion that's aiming to make society better, but don't actually do anything about it. Like, for example, wearing a red nose or appearing on TV for comic relief without actually making any sort of donation. Now, these values of unity and diversity could be virtue signalling if we don't live them out. So let's actually do something about it. So, what does this have to do with being on the road together where the river flows? Well, the fact that the word together appears in our vision statement should be a pretty heavy hint. Let's have a think about what a travelling group, a group on the road together, who are united, would look like. Now, we hit a challenge straight off because the easiest way to unite a group travelling together is to agree on a destination. If you see a bus that's going non-stop to Leeds, you can be pretty confident that all the people on it want to go to Leeds. But of course, the flip side to that is that anyone who doesn't want to go to Leeds is very unlikely to get on that bus. Now, we don't actually know where our road is taking us. We trust God that it's going somewhere good. And we know that, eternally speaking, our destiny is eternal life. But we don't have an end point in the here and now. Our vision is not a smart objective, to use business terminology. It would actually be easier to unite if we did have a vision that said more about where we were going, where the destination is and what exactly it looks like. But it would also be much more likely then, I think, that not everybody would come on the road with us. So our unity is going to have to come from the trust in Jesus that we explored in week 1, and from a desire to travel together. If you've decided to travel together as a group, if we've decided to travel together, then a few things follow. First, you'll go at a speed that everyone can manage. That doesn't mean that all of us will always travel at exactly the same speed. In fact, I'm absolutely certain that people wanting to travel at different speeds, people going off ahead for a bit, people hanging back a bit, particularly around things that need to change in our lives together, I'm sure that will be part of our journeying. But if those groups forging ahead and those groups hanging back lose touch with one another, then we will no longer be on the road together. We'll just be on the road. And in fact, we won't even know if we're still on the same road as each other. Now, let me tell you at this point, one of the things I really dislike in life is travelling in a convoy of cars. They're not knowing how fast the person behind is prepared to drive. They're not wanting to speed up in built-up areas, but being forced to not to lose touch with the person in front. They're waiting for hours at junctions so that you've got a gap big enough for 4 cars to get into, including the person 3 cars back who always stalls when they do a hill start. The list goes on. But actually, we will have to think of each other, to wait for each other, to catch up with each other, to go faster or slower than we personally would. So that's the first thing that follows from travelling together. Secondly, a united travelling party shares its resources, doesn't it, to enable the whole group to make the journey. If you go walking with friends, not everybody's brought chocolate. Well, maybe they have. Not everybody's brought the right size plasters. Not everybody's got the OS map. You share. There'll be more of that in future weeks. And thirdly, a united travelling party gets to know each other. Lots more on that next week. There's another thing though. Remember the bit about unity being a question of welcoming new people into the community? Jesus tells a parable about a banquet. All the usual people are invited, but they've made their excuses. This is quite obviously a picture of God's people taking him for granted and prioritising their own private concerns and habits over God's invitation to come together in his house. So what does the master in the parable, the Lord, do? He sends his servants out into the highways and byways, the roads, to find anyone and everyone to come to the party. If we go on the road, we will find anyone and everyone. And if they want to join us, we are called to welcome them and embrace them, no matter who they are. And where does the river fit in? Well, the river, the Holy Spirit, just as he is the source of our joy, is the source of our unity and our diversity. It's as simple as that. Remember, we don't make unity and diversity. We pursue and embrace it. The river flows. We stay near it and allow it to flow through us. So what shall we do? How can we pursue unity? How can we embrace diversity? A few thoughts. Unity is not the same as agreement. We agree on the creeds. We agree to go on the road together where the river flows. We may well disagree about a whole range of other things. That is not in itself disunity. Within our churches there are disagreements. For example, about liturgy, about money, about ethics, about practical decisions that we need to make. And that's just within our 3 parishes. In the whole church across the world, well, the disagreements are myriad. But unity remains. And where that unity is not lived out, I want to suggest that this is caused not by disagreement, but by a refusal to have a proper and loving conversation about disagreement. Those conversations might lead to agreement, but they might not. What it can lead to is a conscious decision to live in loving relationship and unity with those with whom we disagree. If you haven't come across disagreements in church, I suggest that you are probably living in what the media nowadays calls an echo chamber. It's a nice place to live where you say something and everybody around you nods vigorously and says, and adds their voice to it. And you all become more and more indignant at the very idea that people could think differently than you do. And so then people don't. Or at least, not the people that you ever interact with. Because all the people who think differently have gone away, probably hurt and possibly angry, to lick their wounds and form their own echo chambers. And no one is pursuing anything or embracing anyone except those who embrace them back and massage their egos while they're at it. Does that sound like something that could happen within church? If that does strike any kind of chord, let me simply encourage you to talk to some other people. Perhaps especially those who you think might disagree with you. Remembering that the aim is not to change their mind, although you might, but to be one with them and to embrace them. The church has always had to wrestle with the question of where the boundaries of difference should be set, both in terms of belief and behaviour. Acts is, as we've said before on this course, a story of working out what the church believes about this new revelation of God as Trinity, about the nature of good news for the whole world, about who can be baptised into it, and a story of working out, as new people with their own moral and ethical systems that they've inherited join the church, how much Jewish law and morality, and indeed how much the ethics and morals of other churches, should apply to all churches. How much new churches can change things, and most importantly, Who decides? Now, you'd have had to be hiding in a very small echo chamber not to notice that the Church of England is having one of those conversations right now about sex and marriage. We do not, in the Church, agree on these things. And that statement could apply to almost any group of Christians. Now, this course is not, you'll possibly be pleased to hear, going to lead us into conversation about that particular issue, about where the appropriate boundaries on those questions are. But it must lead us into thinking about how to be united in our diversity. Pursue relationship with those you think are wrong, knowing that actually you are also wrong, because none of us is perfect. And embrace those who you might find uncomfortable or even unacceptable. There's a place for standing up for what is right, but there is never a place for failing to love a sister or a brother in Christ because they're mistaken. Finally, remembering that we are facing outwards, let's think about people outside the church. Unity is unity within the church, not unity with everybody. But that unity should be evident and experienced by people as they come into contact with us. They should see that we are united, and they should find that they can be welcomed. Now, all churches say that they are welcoming. I challenge you to find a website or job advert that does not describe a church as welcoming in some way, shape or form. But let me ask you, have you ever been to a church and not felt welcome? I'm almost certain the answer will be yes. So somebody must be lying. And if we, who, broadly speaking, probably don't present an immediate challenge to people in other churches, can feel excluded or unwelcome, how much more those people who do challenge our preconceptions about what church is, or are simply challenging people. Think of everyone you see in an average day. How would you welcome them into our community if they wanted to come and see? Perhaps there are even people who are part of our community who you find it difficult to welcome. Now, there's an art here. When we host, we don't do everything in exactly the way we'd do it if we didn't have guests. But we also don't do everything exactly the way our guests would do it, do we? Now, if you invite people for a cup of tea and they ask if they can have a sandwich, you probably say yes. But if they say, oh, can I move in for a week? And by the way, I brought my laundry, you probably say no. We are not called to be robot slaves, but we are called to reflect God's gathering and uniting love. So how shall we do it?